He lived an ordinary life, but at some point his existence turned into horror when local bandits began to attack his family and himself. But they did not suspect that he was the most ruthless killer and was ready to take revenge on them at all costs. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching. I'm sure you'll like this movie. There are many interesting moments and unexpected plot twists. The movie kicks off in 1974 in a small town in Northern Ireland. Two guys from a mafia crew stroll into a local bar, unaware that a notorious woman named Doreen, her brother Curtis, and their accomplices Seamus and Conan are lurking nearby with some shady plans. Seamus and Conan stealthily plant a bomb next to the bar and casually walk away. Doreen spots some kids playing near the rigged car and frantically yells at them to get away, but it's too late. The bomb explodes, killing both the mafia crew and the innocent children in a devastating blast. After the chaos, Doreen, Curtis, Conan, and Seamus quickly hop into a getaway car and flee the scene. We then meet our main character, Finbar, who's busy showing off his shooting skills at a local practice session with Sheriff Vincent, who's known for his marksmanship. But Finbar steals the show and wins the bet. Later, they head to Finbar's place to chat about the rising crime rates in town, which are getting out of control. It looks like they'll need to take serious action soon. That night, Finbar rolls into a crowded bar for a few drinks, holding a photo with someone's face circled. The bar's announcer introduces a famous singer named Bart, who wows the crowd with his performance. It turns out the photo Finbar is holding is of Bart. After a while, Finbar drives to a remote spot in the woods, pops open his car trunk, and reveals Bart, who is trapped and holding a shotgun. Finbar takes him to a hillside, hands him a shovel, and tells him to start digging. Bart quickly realizes he's in a graveyard filled with Finbar's past victims. He asks how many people Finbar has killed, but Finbar remains silent. In a final, heart-to-heart moment, Bart shares his troubled past, admitting that he used to be hot-headed but has since moved on. Finbar seems to contemplate this, but then, without warning, he buries Bart in the very spot he dug, planting a tree as a grim reminder. At this point, it's clear Finbar is a hitman, taking out targets for cash. He then visits his manager Robert's house, where Robert's wife Josie greets him and offers to cook his favorite dish. Kevin, a new guy, enters and grabs some bread from Josie's basket, which annoys Finbar, a classic case of impatience from the younger crowd. Finbar talks with Robert, letting him know he's finished the job, and notices Kevin driving off in his car. Out of nowhere, he suggests Robert pass future contracts to Kevin. Finbar then opens up about his dark past since losing his wife and expresses his desire to leave the killing behind to start fresh. He shares how his wife always wanted him to live a life of helping others. Robert is shocked and asks what his next step will be, to which Finbar replies that he wants to start farming and grow things in his garden. Robert appreciates the decision and hands Finbar the payment for the job, wishing him well. The next day, Finbar starts his new life as a farmer, clearing a field and heading into town to buy some seeds. After returning, he visits his kind neighbor Rita, who invites him over for dinner. She's excited about his farming plans and teases him about his cooking skills, comparing them to his late wife's. Later, Finbar heads to another part of the neighborhood where he sees a girl named Moya fishing off a bridge. She's struggling, so he offers her a handkerchief to help untangle the nylon line. Moya explains she needs to catch a fish for dinner. While reeling in the bait, she accidentally drops her lunchbox into the water. Finbar notices scars on her neck, but she quickly covers them and runs away. Later, Finbar meets Moya's mother, Sinead, at her bartending job, and he explains the lunchbox situation, taking the blame for what happened. Moya follows him home, and when they arrive, her uncle Curtis is there. Finbar instantly feels something off about him. Curtis is one of the men involved in the bombing. Finbar realizes that something big might be happening soon. He brings a basket of food for Moya and hands it to Sinead. The next day, he notices Moya looking frightened and hands her a bullet, asking about it. She remains silent, and when Curtis shows up, she quickly rushes back inside. Curtis asks Sinead for some food and hints that Finbar might be a predator before leaving with the supplies. Later, Finbar shows Robert the bullet Moya gave him and asks for help dealing with Curtis, worried about what he might do to her. But Robert brushes him off, saying he's done with that life. Finbar decides to keep an eye on Curtis. One evening, he offers Curtis a ride, and Curtis, being friendly, accepts. During the drive, Finbar talks about his love for shooting and asks Curtis about his interest in guns. Finbar pulls over, opens the trunk, and reveals an impressive firearm. He drives Curtis into the woods, clearly planning something, but Curtis resists and a fight breaks out. Just as things escalate, Kevin shows up, explaining that Robert sent him to keep an eye on Finbar. After the tense confrontation, They end up burying Curtis together. Later, at a bar, they unwind, and Kevin expresses admiration for Finbar's skills, admitting that he sometimes takes lives for money, but feels like he'll never match Finbar's body count. This ticks off Finbar, who sternly reminds Kevin that killing is no laughing matter, warning him that if he ever jokes about death again, there will be serious consequences. 2 days after Curtis goes missing, Doran grows worried and starts looking for him. She visits Sinead to ask about her brother, but Sinead says she hasn't seen him either. Frustrated, Doran grabs her by the neck, demanding answers. Things get tense when Doran checks Curtis's gun and finds a bullet missing, which only heightens her anxiety. Afterward, Doran leaves and contacts her boss to gather information on Curtis's whereabouts. The next scene, Doran visits Robert's house to inquire about her missing brother. When she brings up Curtis, Robert pretends not to know him and claims his men are too busy to help. Just as Doran is about to leave, she spots a bullet on the floor that perfectly matches her gun. Furious, she points her weapon at Robert, demanding the truth. He admits Curtis is dead but swears he wasn't the one responsible. He reveals that a guy named Finbar was the one who took Curtis out a few days earlier. Enraged, Doran shoots and kills Robert. Now, she and her crew are hellbent on tracking down whoever murdered Curtis. Later, Finbar and Kevin hear about Robert's death from Josie. Finbar tries to console her, promising they'll handle it, but Josie mentions a woman aggressively asking about Curtis, which raises alarms for the guys. Realizing they're being hunted, Finbar and Kevin quickly destroy any incriminating paperwork related to their past and future plans. Finbar advises Josie to call the police. Meanwhile, Doran convinces Seamus to pose as Finbar's nephew during a visit to a store. The shopkeeper believes the story and gives them Finbar's address. As Seamus arrives at Finbar's place, he runs into Sheriff Vincent, who's skeptical about Seamus being in town. The group heads to Finbar's house, where they find old war photos. Coincidentally, Finbar is on his way home too. He notices the lights on in his house and senses something's wrong, urging Kevin to pull over. They wait nearby, watching the house, and during the wait, Kevin shares a story about how he got into a bar fight that landed him a job with Robert. The next day, Doran is furious that Finbar didn't come home the previous night. She takes out her anger on his car parked outside. Kevin sees this and almost pulls his gun on her, but Finbar stops him. Just then, Rita steps outside, and Doran confronts her about Finbar. When Rita says something hurtful, Doran punches her, knocking her out cold. After she leaves, Finbar and Kevin rush to help Rita, and Finbar anonymously calls for medical assistance. Later, while at Kevin's place, Finbar finds a partially burned newspaper detailing the Belfast bombing. Curious, he goes to a store and buys a fresh copy. Discovering that Doran and her crew are the prime suspects, Finbar tracks down their hideout, which is filled with explosives, and then heads to a football match, where Doran and her gang are present. During the game, Conan sees their names and photos in the paper, and it freaks him out. He suggests they skip town, but Doran is determined to get revenge for her brother. Finbar spots Doran at the match and follows her to the restroom. Unfortunately, she sneaks up behind him and holds a gun to his head. Finbar insists he didn't kill her brother but knows who did. Doran demands the name, and Finbar agrees to bring the guy to a bar. Doran warns him that if he doesn't show up with the culprit on time, she'll blow the whole place up. Later, Finbar tells Kevin about his upcoming meeting with Doran, explaining that he has to take her out. This excites Kevin, as he's always wanted to be part of something big. That evening, they meet outside the bar, and although Kevin brings a gun, Finbar tells him he won't need it. Instead, he hands Kevin a big stack of cash, urging him to leave and start fresh in California. This gesture hits Kevin deeply, as no one has ever been that generous with him before. Finbar then heads into the bar, while Conan, carrying a suspicious bag, approaches the place. Outside, Vincent spots Seamus near his wrecked car, and shortly after discovers a bomb inside Conan's bag. Meanwhile, inside the bar, Finbar and Doran start talking. Finbar suggests they move to the back to discuss matters privately, but Doran warns him she'll shoot if he tries anything. At that moment, Kevin unexpectedly shows up, surprising Doran by calling her by name. When she brushes him off, Kevin smugly claims he's the one who killed her brother, enraging her even more. In response, Doran shoots Kevin in the stomach, and chaos erupts in the bar as people scramble for safety. Vincent discovers the bomb in Conan's bag, but Seamus interferes. Amidst the confusion, Kevin, despite his injury, manages to shoot Doran, and Finbar takes down Conan. Things get intense when Finbar overpowers Seamus before he can set off the bomb, violently taking him out. Wounded but determined, Kevin urges Finbar to take the money and head to California for a new beginning. Suddenly, Duran shoots Kevin in the head, killing him. Enraged, Finbar goes after Duran, but Conan intervenes, forcing Finbar to take him down as well. Moments later, Duran leaves the bar, and Finbar follows her to a nearby church. There, she asks him to shoot her, wanting to atone for their shared sins. Finbar agrees, acknowledging the guilt they both carry. Unfortunately, Duran succumbs to her injuries, bleeding out. In the end, Finbar buries her in the woods and plants a tree on her grave as a tribute. He then meets with Rita, seeking her forgiveness for not being honest about his past. She reassures him that he doesn't need to explain, accepting him as he is. As the film closes, Finbar thanks her and sets off on a journey to find a new beginning.